Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I know it's the last day. It gets a little tough, right? But are you guys ready to decode molecular hydrogen scientifically? All right, good. So earlier today, I was briefly discussing my presentation with my girlfriend, and she says to me, just don't be too funny, too charming, or too intellectual. Just be yourself. Before we get started, though, quick disclosure that I'm an affiliate independent contractor for the companies listed here. And our learning objectives today is that we're going to review the scientific literature on molecular hydrogen. We will learn how molecular hydrogen impacts our biology and physiology, understand the mechanisms of actions and how it helps us with disease. We will demonstrate how it can also help reverse aging. We're at the Longevity Fest anyways, right? And we will see how we could implement it in our clinical setting. So this is our agenda for today. Can everybody understand me clearly? Yes, because I just wanted to make sure, because I have this accent, but I didn't have this accent until I started speaking English. So all kidding aside, this is the agenda, so we'll start with a brief introduction. So hydrogen comes from the Greek words hydro, meaning water, and gen or genus, meaning creator, because water creates, or hydrogen creates water when we burn it, right? Now, even though hydrogen was known in its rudimentary form in the 16th century, it wasn't until the 18th century that a British scientist by the name Henry Cavendish identified hydrogen as a separate substance or element in 1766. Now, in 1783, which, by the way, is about 6 years before the French Revolution, that's when the hydrogen balloon was developed. And hydrogen kept its role in airships well through the 20th century, with the infamous Hindenburg being a nice or noticeable example. But also in the 20th century, we see that hydrogen gains traction in the industrial industry and applications. For example, the production or development of ammonia, which obviously happens through nitrogen and hydrogen, which revolutionized the agricultural industry because we were enabling the mass production of fertilizers, right? Another example is in petroleum refining, because hydrogen there helps purify and take impurities like sulfur and other impurities out of crude oil, generating clean energy. And we all know that hydrogen is a crucial component of rocket fuel, extensively used by NASA in the Apollo missions. But today, and that's why we're all here, hydrogen gained a lot of interest recently in the medical field because it seems to have many and vast therapeutic applications. Now, hydrogen is the first element on a periodic table. 1 electron, 1 proton, the smallest element in the universe. It is the major component of stars, and it's also a key component of water and other organic compounds in the atmosphere. As you know, predominantly nitrogen, 78%, oxygen, 21%. Hydrogen is only 0.00005% by volume, but it is the most abundant element. And what we really need to know, especially when we talk about these hydrogen devices later, is that hydrogen becomes explosive in the right proportions when it's mixed with air and oxygen, between 4 and 75%. Okay? Good. A little bit of chemistry is always fun, right? The left top, we have an hydrogen atom. Very simple, 1 atom, 1 electron. Over here, we see that the hydrogen atom has gained an electron, and so it becomes a negatively charged hydride ion, H-, which is very important, this chemistry, when it comes to energy production in the cell, because these hydrides, they can donate electrons to other molecules, such as antioxidants donating an electron to what? Free radicals to neutralize them, right? Now, on the right there, we see that hydrogen loses an electron, and then it becomes a positively charged proton, right? H+. Now, protons, They are very important. The chemistry is very important because it's the base of acids, and it's very important in how we create molecular or cellular energy. Now here, this is what we're going to talk about today, hydrogen gas or molecular hydrogen, because it's a covalent strong bond between two hydrogen atoms that share their electrons. And unlike these two here that are very reactive because they are charged, this is a very stable molecule that is neutral and not charged. Okay? We also know, or should know, and that's why it's a quick refresher, that hydrogen has a lot to do with pH, because pH stands for potential of hydrogen. The less hydrogen we have, the less hydrogen we have in a solution, the more alkaline the solution, and the more hydrogen we have, the more acidic, right? So the pH is a measure of hydrogen ions in a solution. We know this is very important. We know that our blood pH should be between 7.35, 7.45. We know that small fluctuations can cause health issues. On the other hand, we have stomach acid, necessary for digestion, pH 1.5, 3.5, very acidic. So what I want to tell you that is, even though we've been decoding some of the chemistry of molecular hydrogen, what we're talking about is not H- or H+. We're talking about molecular hydrogen, which is hydrogen gas, a strong covalent bond between two hydrogen atoms that is neutral. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about these therapeutic applications. All right, quick scientific review. Currently, there's about 1,200 scientific studies and white papers out there, including 200 human studies. And these studies, they show that molecular hydrogen is proven effective against about 170 common diseases, and therefore it provides a safe solution or a standalone therapy for both human and elements. Some of these conditions are diabetes, cancer, autoimmune diseases, arthritis, stroke, cardiovascular diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, age-related illnesses, mental illnesses, and GI problems. Now, in order to really understand the vast impact of molecular hydrogen on those diseases, we really need to understand molecular hydrogen's effect on our biology and our physiology. We need to understand how molecular hydrogen impacts us on a cellular and even a mitochondrial level. So you guys ready for that little journey? All right, good. So, first of all, as the smallest and lightest element in the universe and being non-polar, no-charge, neutral, molecular hydrogen easily and rapidly diffuses through tissues and cell membranes, exerting its protective and therapeutic effects within the cell. Now, it's these same properties that allow molecular hydrogen to easily pass through the blood-brain barrier and exerts its properties on the neurons and supporting brain health. Now, we all know that the blood-brain barrier is a protective shield that separates the circulating blood from the delicate brain tissues, allowing oxygen and essential nutrients to get in and blocking harmful substances such as pathogens and toxins, right? But despite its selective nature, some substances still can sneak through. For example, caffeine, cocaine maybe too. What have I been taking? Caffeine, alcohol, and certain drugs. They easily can pass through also, and that's why we see its effect rapidly and noticeably on the brain, right? Now, certain medications that do have an effect in other parts of the body cannot pass the blood-brain barrier, and that's why we see in conventional medicine often that we have limited treatment options for neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, brain tumors, etc. So, what we learned is that it's the smallest molecule, it's not charged, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, gets into the brain cells, and it gets into each and every cell. Now, let's go over its properties, its effect on biology and physiology. Molecular hydrogen, number one's feature is its role as a powerful selective antioxidant. Because unlike any other antioxidant, it is able to cross the cell membrane and fight oxidative stress at its source within the cell, protecting the nucleus, the DNA, the RNA, the mitochondria, the proteins, and everything else. Now, molecular hydrogen exhibits a remarkable selectivity in this antioxidant activity. In other words, it is able to neutralize and fight the harmful free radicals, such as hydroxyl free radicals and peroxynitrate, while sparing the beneficial ROS, reaction oxygen species, that are responsible for cellular signaling and cellular homeostasis. So it's this selective action that allows minimization or reducing of oxidative stress without disrupting essential physiological processes. So that's its number one property. Number two, it significantly reduces chronic or systemic inflammation in our body and in the cells. Now, studies show that it will modulate and promote the NRF2 pathway, meaning increasing cellular resistance to oxidants, right? It also shows that it reduces pro-inflammatory cytokines such as TNF-alpha, tumor necrosing factor alpha, and it reduces interleukins 1 alpha, 1 beta, 6, 8, and 10. In addition, it also helps influence the regulation of ERS, endoplasmic reticulum stress-related factors, which has a positive effect on conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, irritable bowel syndromes, allergic reactions, etc. Strong antioxidant, strong anti-inflammatory. Most of us here knows that that combination can affect any disease because we know it's the cause of most diseases, right? Now, in addition to those two, it also has a positive effect on our immune system. It regulates T cells, it modulates macrophages, it modulates the gut immune axis, and it supports natural killer cells, all preventing or protecting us from autoimmune diseases.
Does it affect CRP?
Questions later. We only got 30 minutes. Besides anti-inflammatory, antioxidants, and boosting the immune system, there's more good stuff to share. Autophagy, a cellular process that involves the degradation and recycling of damaged and unnecessary components, obviously plays a key role in cellular homeostasis, right? And so studies show that molecular hydrogen has an effect on autophagy in 3 ways. Number one, molecular hydrogen, due to its selective antioxidant capacity, reduces excessive autophagy, which can lead to cellular death. Number two, it also modulates mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin, right? Which basically promotes beneficial autophagy in response to cellular stress. And number three, in models of cerebral ischemia, we see that molecular hydrogen also supports cytoprotective autophagy, meaning we are going to remove cellular damage and protect the nerves. So that's the ways that molecular hydrogen promotes autophagy in our body. Another one that everybody likes to talk about is apoptosis, or programmed cell death, which is a natural biological mechanism for removing damaged or unwanted cells. And we know that this is very crucial for our body to be healthy, young, and functional. Now, certain cells are able to resist autophagy, and therefore they linger in our body. You already heard about this. These cells are called zombie cells or senescent cells. And they basically stop dividing without dying off. So they linger in our body, they take up space, they take up energy, they take up nutrients without giving any, good function in return. And we also know that cellular senescence is one of the distinct hallmarks of aging, right? So what does molecular hydrogen do? Molecular hydrogen has shown in these studies that it really regulates apoptosis by preventing unwanted or excessive cell death. How does it do that? Antioxidant properties and regulating mitochondrial function. Okay? So, synopsis. It gets into the cell, be able to protecting the DNA, and etc. It gets through the blood-brain barrier, protecting and affecting our brain cells and neurons. Number one property, selective antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, modulates autophagy apoptosis, helps with the immune system. Okay, that's pretty cool. Now, I got to point it that way. In addition to that, I wanted to take just a little bit of time to also make the connection between molecular hydrogen and NAD+, NADPH, because after all, hydrogen is family of the NAD family. Now, we have been talking about cellular damage and DNA damage. Did you guys know that we have an innate DNA repair system? The ARTD1 repair system. It's a system of 17 enzymes that basically act as DNA damage sensors and signaling molecules. So they basically bind to the damaged DNA, create a matrix, and start repairing. Now, why does this DNA repair system not work in most of us? Because this system needs fuel, and the fuel is NAD+. Besides being the fuel for our DNA repair system, we already know that NAD is also essential in mitochondrial function, genetic expression, epigenetic modifications, and it also promotes our sirtuins, our longevity proteins, right? So that's its connection with NAD+. Now, what about NADPH? NADPH is the battery of our cells. It's like a reservoir of electrons. We all know this, right? We know that antioxidants can donate an electron to a free radical to neutralize it. But what most of us don't realize is that the antioxidant is left oxidized and totally useless. It can only do that once. But what if we had a reservoir of electrons and we could continue to donate another electron to that same free radical, and another one, and another one? Could you see how we exponentially could increase the effectiveness against our fight against excess free radicals? Yes? How does molecular hydrogen play a role with NADPH levels in our body? Well, molecular hydrogen inhibits NOx, the enzyme that breaks down NADPH. Good. All right. This is my favorite slide. Mitochondria. We already know it crosses the cell membrane and gets inside the cell. So what the studies show on its effect on mitochondria. Mitochondria, our energy factories, they produce 90% of the cellular energy through a process called oxidative phosphorylation, which stores energy in the form of ATP. We all know that. But let's dive a little bit deeper into the numbers, because I think we kind of underestimate these mitochondria. We have 37 trillion cells, right? Now, each of those cells, each one of them, has a few hundred to hundreds of thousands of mitochondria. For example, skin cells have just a few hundred mitochondria. More energy-intensive cells, like your brain, the muscle, your liver, they have thousands to tens of thousands mitochondria per cell. And our heart has hundreds of thousands of mitochondria because they are responsible for every heartbeat. Right? Now, each mitochondrium produces 2 billion ATP per minute. Think about this, 37 trillion cells, each one of them, hundreds to hundred thousands of mitochondria, each one of them 2 billion ATP per second. So we produce hundreds of quadrillions of molecules of ATP per day to sustain the 1.8 quadrillion chemical reactions per second. We actually produce and recycle 300 to 400 pounds of ATP per day. So next time somebody asks you if you're busy, you answer yes, extremely. Unlike other elements within our cell, mitochondria also have their own DNA, aside from the nuclear DNA, mitochondrial DNA. It encodes 13 proteins that are responsible or needed for that energy production within the cell. Now, while the mitochondria produce energy, they also produce byproducts like ROS, reactive oxygen species, which once more can cause oxidative stress, damage the DNA, lower the energy production, and cause disease. But who's the savior? Molecular hydrogen, because it waltzes into the cell, right? Reduces oxidative stress by neutralizing those hydroxyl free radicals, peroxynitride, etc. Reduces inflammation, increases energy production, protects mitochondrial DNA, promotes mitophagy, removing and recycling damaged mitochondria, and promotes or stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, the making of new mitochondria. You're with me? That's what molecular hydrogen can do on a cellular and mitochondrial level. Now we're at the longevity fest, and I got asked often, does molecular hydrogen also have an effect on our telomeres? Because that's kind of a buzzword always been when it comes to longevity, right? Our telomeres being the end caps of our chromosomes that protect our DNA in each and every cell. And those telomeres, they shorten as part of normal replication. But when they become too short, they can no longer divide, and then we actually could consider them as senescent cells. In other words, that is linked to what? DNA damage, aging, and age-related diseases. So studies show that molecular hydrogen may have an impact three ways. Number one, due to its strong antioxidant activity, it may inhibit or slow down the telomere shortening. Number two, molecular hydrogen modulates mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin, extending our lifespan. And number three, it also may have an effect on telomerase activity. Telomerase is the enzyme that can add DNA sequence repeats to telomeres. In other words, counteracting the shortening of those telomeres. You guys with me? Yeah. All right, good. So, now that we understand how molecular hydrogen affects our biology and physiology, how it affects our cell, easily can enter the cell and exerts its properties there on the DNA, the RNA, the mitochondria, how it can enter or easily cross the blood-brain barrier and have an effect on our neurons and our brain cells, how it's a selective antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, modulates autophagy, apoptosis, has an effect on the immune system, etc., we can understand why research now show it has a positive impact on already over 170 common diseases, right? Because it works on that cellular level. Now let's just review a few of those diseases. The common culprit in neurodegenerative diseases is what? Inflammation, oxidative stress, and mitochondrial dysfunction. And we already know molecular hydrogen gets through the blood-brain barrier and fights those three factors, okay? At the same time, it will prevent neurons from self-destruction because it regulates apoptosis, and it also stimulates autophagy, which means it clears out cellular debris and also damaged proteins, such as amyloid beta in Alzheimer's or alpha-synuclein in Parkinson's. Okay? In Parkinson's models, we also see that molecular hydrogen protects the dopaminergic neurons. And the effect of that is that we see in those Parkinson patients, we see smoother movements and less tremors. Okay? And then last but not least, molecular hydrogen protects us against excitotoxicity, which is an overstimulation of our neurons by glutamate. And we see that in diseases like ALS and Huntington's. Who wants to talk about cancer? Lots of studies on that. But simply said, what is cancer, right? Cancer starts with a mutation of our nuclear DNA and mitochondrial DNA by what? By those hydroxyl free radicals. Okay? We know that hydrogen can waltz into the cell and neutralize those harmful hydroxyl free radicals. And so studies really support the tumor suppressing quality of molecular hydrogen. We also know that molecular hydrogen, again, due to its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, will basically cut the power supply to cancer cells and inhibits metastasis. Cancer cells also could be considered senescent cells, those cells that keep lingering without any function in our body, and we know that molecular hydrogen helps with autophagy. We also know that conventional treatments usually leave our immune system broken. And molecular hydrogen does what? It keeps it running smoothly so it can detect and attack those cancer cells. And so these various studies show that it has also a very specific action with each and every specific cancer. So the research shows it has a positive effect on brain cancer, including glioblastoma, one of the worst cancers, breast cancer, lung cancer, liver cancer, colorectal cancer by restoring the CD8 plus T cells. We see good effects on renal cancer, esophageal cancer, skin cancer, and the list goes on. And the common consensus is that if we combine conventional treatments with molecular hydrogen, that we see an increased patient compliance, less adverse reactions, and most important, a significant improvement in clinical outcome. All right, our gut biome. We all know that these trillions of bacteria in our digestive tract, that they contribute to overall health. But did you know it's also deeply correlated to our energy production, metabolism, and to optimal cellular function? Because our good bacteria break down foods and fibers and turn them into short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which is an essential fuel source for what? For our cells, including the cells that line our gut, to promote a healthy gut and to increase or optimize nutrient absorption. Now, what it means is that in order to, that having a healthy gut basically equals what? Better cellular energy production, okay? So how do we supercharge that energy production through the gut? Number one, we need to nurture a balanced gut biome, right? Number one. Number two, we need to support the gut with anti-inflammatory foods, omega-3, etc. And exercise has been shown clearly to help repair leaky gut and kind of prevent or check against endotoxicity. So the question then becomes, how does molecular hydrogen play a role, right? Study shows that due to its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects, it basically fortifies the gut barrier and the gut lining, and it also modulates ion transport. One of the more interesting things that molecular hydrogen does when it comes to the gut is that it helps repair the electrical potential of the gut to minus 300 millivolts and higher, which is the necessary environment for good or anaerobic bacteria to colonize. If that environment is not suitable, nothing is going to happen. So that's where hydrogen plays a crucial role in reestablishing that electrical potential of the gut. Longevity. I think we already know the answers. You know, does molecular hydrogen promote longevity? What we learned here just in these 20-25 minutes is that molecular hydrogen is a strong antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, modulates autophagy, apoptosis, is cyto and mitoprotective, and has a positive effect on stress, on energy production, on gut health, on our DNA repair, and on our certins, longevity proteins. That's already what we learned. If we look at the studies, there's more. It shows that molecular hydrogen improves DNA methylation, it improves sleep quality, strength, general pain, brain metabolic indices, and antioxidant status. And we also already learned that it may help slow down the shortening of those telomeres. So, if you want to increase your lifespan, you should definitely consider molecular hydrogen. Not? I woke you up. Great. Oops. There we go. Oh. So, next therapeutic application. We'll finish it up in a few minutes. Our body actually does produce hydrogen itself, right? Our bacteria break down fibers, and those fibers produce hydrogen in our gut that helps with digestion. Now, if our diet is not so stellar, or if our digestive system is not functioning optimally, or we just age, time is I won't say it out loud, right? So then the levels of hydrogen will reduce and it will affect our cellular and biochemical processes. Now, when we drink or inhale hydrogen, that hydrogen gets to the cells through our blood plasma, right? Now, the saturation in our blood plasma is 1.8 to 2.2 cc per liters, right? So what that means is that if it's saturated and we continue to inhale or drink hydrogen, the excess hydrogen, where does it go? It gets exhaled. And that's what makes hydrogen 100% safe, and you can't overdo it. Okay? Now, what are the therapeutic applications? First of all, you all guys have seen those hydrogen tablets. It's a chemical reaction. Those tablets are basically elemental magnesium. When you drop them in water, they change the pH. That's why we talked about pH of the water, releasing what? Hydrogen as a byproduct. But that hydrogen is unstable, so that's why they tell you drink it immediately. We don't know exactly how much you get, and it's a little metallic, but that's an easy way to produce hydrogen. All the other devices, when we talk about the travel bottles, or we talk about units that generate molecular hydrogen water, or the ones for inhalation, or the ones that do both, they all work through electrolysis, right? So we have an electrical current that splits the water, H2O, in what? Oxygen gas and hydrogen gas. The oxygen escapes into the room. The hydrogen gas we can either inhale or suspend back into the water for hydrogen water. Now, the better devices, they use a proton exchange membrane, PEM membrane, such as an SPE, solid polymer electrolyte membrane. Why? Because those membranes allow the protons, H plus, to go through and really get a separation of hydrogen and oxygen. So we generate pure molecular hydrogen, 99.99%, without any harmful bygases or byproducts. Okay, so that's what we want to look for there. Now, I often get asked, what's really the difference between hydrogen water and hydrogen inhalation, right? So, a few pros and cons. Hydrogen inhalation obviously gets directly into the bloodstream, so we get much faster results. While hydrogen water has to pass through the digestive system, we get more gradual benefits. Also, hydrogen inhalation is more for acute conditions or neurodegenerative conditions, because we can deliver a much higher concentration in a very short time. Okay? And of course, within neurodegenerative conditions, through the blood-brain barrier straight to the cells. Hydrogen water is slower. It's probably good, or it's recommended for maintenance, for general health, and also GI problems, because with GI problems, the water would come in direct contact with the gut. Okay? But my question is always, why not do both? I inhale hydrogen because it's a much higher concentration, but at the same time, I got to drink water anyway, so not why make it hydrogen water, right? Now, for most of you also, people are always wondering, what's really the difference in concentration that I can deliver with inhalation versus water? In order to answer that question, you need to understand flow rate. So a lot of the home units have a flow rate of 300, 600, up to 1200 cc's per minute. The commercial units go all the way up to 2,000, even 3,000 cc's per minute. That's the flow rate. But we need to understand that hydrogen concentration is only up to 4%. Because we learned that hydrogen becomes what? Flammable, explosive at 4.3%. All right? So, for example, if we have a unit with a flow rate of 600 cc's per minute, and 4% is hydrogen, that means we are actually inhaling or getting 24 cc's of hydrogen per minute, correct? Now let's say we breathe 15 minutes. We have a 15-minute session. 24 times 15, we get 360 cc's of hydrogen in 15 minutes of inhalation with a 600 flow rate. Everybody with me? All those mathematicians with me? All right. Now, if we would need to get 360 cc's by drinking water at 1.7, for example, cc's per liter, we would have to drink approximately 62 gallons. So that's the difference between the delivery of the amount of hydrogen between inhalation and water. So, conclusion. Molecular hydrogen is a science-based adjunct or standalone therapy. It's 100% safe. It obviously improves patient outcomes, lessens adverse reactions, especially in cancer and those types of conditions, starting to get used by more and more healthcare professionals within their allopathic medicine practice, but we also find it obviously in med spas, wellness centers, and gyms, because we really don't need that medical supervision because it's 100% safe. And so if you are a healthcare professional and you're looking at a commercial unit to use Here's my last few tips on what to look for in a piece of equipment, right? The first thing you want to know is, are they guaranteeing pure hydrogen? Because you want that 99.9% pure hydrogen. You want to ask about the membrane, the PEM membrane, making sure that it separates that and there's no other byproducts or gases produced. Pretty important, right? Number one. Number two, I would ask about runtime. Runtime is how long can I use this device, patient after patient, without having to shut it off. The longer the runtime, the better, because the runtime kind of indicates on the composition of the catalyst and the materials the device are made with. So really what you want to look for is white gold, platinum, titanium. Those are the things that are sturdy and you can run a long time. The better devices also have a larger tank for their distilled water because you need to be able to run it longer, right? What else? Good devices also may have some sensors that monitor if molecular hydrogen is produced, what the purity of that molecular hydrogen is, etc. And last but not least, the better companies usually also have like additional features such as goggles for eye conditions, boots for diabetic wounds, etc. Okay? So, incorporate it into your practice. I urge it because there's no side effect. You can usually double it up with other treatments. The scientific research is there. You can look into it. And so really consider this and do your research because like any other device, there's these devices, and then there's the best of the best. And when it comes to medical practices, I think you want the highest quality with the highest possible standards, correct? Thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.